And so we've got lots of things to talk about. I'm going to quickly go through each thing that we're going to discuss today, and then we'll be working our way through. There will be, as we go, there will be some little tasks for you to complete. So there might be a little writing task or a little planning task. And so whenever that comes up, I will indicate to you all that it's your turn to contribute. And hopefully this will give you a good chance to practice some of these ideas for yourself. Now, I'm hoping that whenever you send me things through, I'll see them on the chat. So please use the chat to send me your ideas and send me your plans. I will tell you when to do that, but please don't unmute. Just keep yourselves on mute and just use the chat if you want to communicate, because otherwise it's going to become a little bit chaotic. So without further ado, let me talk us through the little plan for today. So we're starting off by talking about creating effective plans. We're also going to be doing plot structures, discussing what different plot structures involve. We'll think about how to create and develop a character. We'll be using dialogue, talking about using dialogue. We will be doing some discussion of creating effective and efficient setting. We'll just be discussing narrative voices. We'll be talking about using checklists, and then we'll talk about exam marks and timings. Now, this is the creative writing masterclass for this next hour, but there will be a question and answer session at 1 o'clock. So if anybody would like to ask questions, or if parents would like to ask questions, that is the chance for them to join for a 15-minute session at the end of the class. So if we could go on to the next slide, let's begin by talking about planning writing. Now, I'm hoping that a lot of this, you will know a lot of this already, but we're going to reinforce some of the key things. So for your 11+ exam, your creative writing planning should take no more than 5 minutes. But you must do it. You must plan your writing, because without a plan, your writing becomes a bit chaotic. And most of the time without the plan, you can always tell. From my students, I can always tell when they haven't planned it, because it doesn't make any sense. Your planning must be focused and concise, and you can use acronyms to remember your literary devices, but we'll come to that in just a second. So next slide, please. First thing that you want to do when you are planning your writing is look at the prompt that you've been given to identify the keywords. So in this one here, this says, write a description of a moment when you found something which surprised and frightened you. Now, the keywords in this one, the keywords are description, found, and surprised. So look at your prompt and kind of highlight, if you want, you can highlight words that stand out to you. Now, in this case, we know that we've got to write a description. So we know we're describing. We're not telling a story, we're describing. We have to find the key event. Found, that verb found tells us that we need to include the discovery of something. And then the emotions, surprise and frightened. Those are also keywords. They tell us the emotions that we should be conveying. So first of all, look at the prompt and identify its keywords. That's going to help guide you to, what you need to include. Next slide, please. So once you've come up with those keywords, once you know exactly what you're going to be including, you need to come up with a 3-part plan. Now, this is what we always recommend for a story. It's the easiest and most straightforward thing to use, and it can work for a range of different writing stories, writing like story prompts. It can work for basically anything. So those 3 sections are going to be beginning, middle, and end. Now, this is something that students often get wrong, and I'm going to recommend this very clearly now. Don't write too much for beginning, middle, and end. As you can see from the second bullet point there, each section should just be 1 single sentence. It should not be longer than that, because then you're basically starting to write the story. So keep your plan really clear and really brief. Now, for these next three bullet points, we've got different types of writing tasks and how you can use these plans. So for a descriptive writing task, you can still use beginning, middle, and end, but your beginning should focus on one element of the scene. Your middle should focus on another element of the scene, and your end should focus on the third element. So for descriptive writing, you can use beginning, middle, and end, but you're just moving around the scene 3 times. For narrative writing, you are focusing on the 3 main parts of the story. The opening, that's the beginning. The dilemma, or the problem, that's the middle. And then the end, that's the solution. So you can see it can still be structured beginning, middle, end, 3 parts. And then persuasive writing, which is slightly different. We're not going to focus too much on this today because it's not really story writing, but we're just showing you how adaptable this is. Your beginning, middle, and end could be the counter argument, so the intro and the counter argument, which means the opposite point of view for the beginning. The middle is your first point, and the end is your second point, and then your conclusion as well. It's going to be tacked on either end. But you can still see that beginning, middle, and end can work for basically any type of writing that you're doing. Keep that in mind. Okay, next slide, please. There we go. So once you've done that, once you've written your beginning, your middle, and end, you're going to be thinking about techniques that you will include in each section. And this is kind of what I was referring to when I meant, acronyms. And what I obviously mean by techniques are your different devices that I'm sure you all know by now. So as you can see from the second bullet point here, for descriptive and narrative writing, this is things like metaphors, personification, onomatopoeia, simile. I mean, there are loads more than that, but those are some of the key ones. Descriptive techniques that help you to convey your meaning or to convey a certain emotion. For persuasive writing, this is a bit different. As hopefully you will know, the devices for persuasive writing include things like rhetorical questions, expert quotations, statistics, repetition, emotive language. So once you've come up with your beginning, middle, and end, you can start revising or recounting in your mind, right, what are the techniques that I need to remember that I include? And a way that you can do that is by writing down an acronym. Could we have the next slide, please? So acronyms, hopefully you will know what an acronym is. Basically a word where every letter stands for a different thing. So we have a couple of suggestions for you here, and we're going to talk more about this later on. So don't worry if you don't get this written down right now. We will go into these details later on. Once you've written down beginning, middle, and end, you can write down your appropriate acronym to help you remember the techniques that will enhance your writing. And you use it as kind of like a little checklist to remind you of the different techniques to use. So for descriptive and narrative, you can use 3 repairs, rule of 3, repetition, exaggeration, personification, alliteration, imagery, rhetorical question, statistic, or repetition. There's 2 R's. One is repetition, one is rhetorical question. Some of you may have your own acronyms. There's other ones like shampoo, there's Mrs. Dear, there's lots of different acronyms. But if you have one that works for you, use that and write it down during your planning section as a little checklist that you can use. You can tick off each one as you go. So those are acronyms, and they're important parts of your planning section. So now let's talk a little bit about narrative plot structures and different ways that you can actually create a plot, how that beginning, middle, and end is going to work. So for a narrative piece of writing, you want to start off with an opening. Now, this is what we also call an exposition. This is when you're going to set the scene, you're going to introduce your main character and give them a goal. What is it that they want? What are they striving towards? What's really important to them? Make that clear from the beginning. If you make that clear from the start, it means that your reader is going to have sympathy for them. They're going to understand, okay, I know what matters to them. I know what they're all about. And that's really important. So start off by doing that in your opening. Then you need to introduce some kind of dilemma or some kind of obstacle. This is something that is blocking them from achieving their goal. So for example, if your main character at the beginning, they want to, let's say, perform in a concert, but the dilemma is that the concert's been cancelled. So how are they going to overcome that obstacle? What are they going to do so they can still perform in some way, or they can still make themselves feel good or feel satisfied in some way despite the concert being cancelled? So start with the opening. What does your character want? And then what is blocking them from getting that goal? And then the solution, or the ending, is where you find a way for that character to either remove the obstacle or find a way around it. Or you can leave it on a note of suspense. Now, I would suggest, in fact, that sometimes notes of suspense can feel a little bit unfinished. It can feel like there was more you wanted to say, but you ran out of time. So it's really better to have a more final, conclusive ending. It's a little bit more satisfying for your examiner. But, you know, a note of suspense can work, but you have to be careful about it. Don't just make it seem like you just ran out of time. So that is a clear narrative plot structure. Now, a couple of tips for using that plot. Do not rush or overdo it. These are common mistakes that we have seen students make many times, so we're showing you how to avoid it. If you have too many things that are happening in your plot, your descriptive skills will get lost because you've got so many things to say. You've got to tell the story, but there's not enough time to say it. So you end up saying, James went downstairs, he got ready, he left, he got in the car, then he drove to school. At school, he found that there was someone being bullied and he felt sad about it. Because if you've given yourself too much to do, you're not going to be able to have time to describe. And what's going to get you marks is your description, not a hasty plot. If there's too many dramatic events in the story as well, you're going to just not have time to write about them all properly. So we call this the rule of one. I haven't mentioned this isn't on the screen, but I think it is on there somewhere later. The rule of one is very important. If you focus on more than one thing, it's going to become confusing. So use the rule of one. One character, one goal, one obstacle, one solution, one setting. Keep it clear. That's what's going to make the best, most effective piece of writing. Okay, now don't worry, I can see, just back one slide for a moment quickly. As just a quick example, I can see that some people in the chat are saying about going back to the slides. We will send you all of these slides after the lesson, so don't worry, you will be able to go back and read over the slides yourself. So quick example. As they walked through the forest, just read this out. As they walked through the forest, a tree fell and nearly crushed them. That was close, thought Claudia. Then they sat down to scrutinize the map. So this is a good idea. It's a good idea to describe these small details, especially with an interesting verb like scrutinize. So instead, I could have just said, the tree fell down. They looked at the map. That would be still telling the same story. But what you need to do is you need to take your time over it. Think about what the narrator is thinking. For example, we've brought in one of the characters' thoughts. That was close, thought Claudia. And then we've thought about the actions that they're taking. We've used little, individual powerful verbs to create more details, to create a clearer, more vivid picture. I could have said that with many less words, but it doesn't matter. This isn't about writing as few words as possible to say as much as you can. It's about taking your time to describe. Okay, next slide, please. So as I said before, it's best to focus your writing around one main event, one core character. This is my rule of one that I was mentioning before. You're not going to have time to write about more than one person and to make them interesting and believable in a 30-minute exam. That's typically how long you get, right? 30 minutes. And even less if you spend 5 minutes planning. So you're going to have, a real panic, a real struggle trying to write about more than one character in 30 minutes. So instead, make one character really interesting, and then the other characters are just going to be referenced in passing, which just means briefly. They're on the outside. Your main character is at the center. Okay, so how do we do that then? Next slide, please. So when you create characters, try and create a character that your reader is going to sympathize and relate to. This is where what we were discussing earlier. When your character has some kind of goal, some kind of desire that they want to achieve, it makes it much easier for our reader to root for them, to actually want to read on and find out if they achieved their goal. But in this case, sorry, just move that out of the way. If you don't do that, then your character isn't going to be interesting. Your character isn't going to inspire sympathy. So instead, you give them a clear goal or a desire. and you give them an obstacle to that goal. We as the reader, we want them to overcome that obstacle. So you can think about this when you're planning and you're creating your character. Ask questions like these. What does your character want? What are they longing for? What are they hoping for? What's on their mind? What's on their heart? And also, what's bothering them? What's stopping them from achieving their goal? Think about these things before. You don't need to write these things down, but think about them as you're creating your character. Okay, next slide, please. This is a mistake that a lot of students often make. They often focus too much on describing the appearance of characters rather than their personality. So you must prioritize their personality, prioritize their character. It doesn't really matter the color of their eyes or the color of their hair or how tall they are or whatever, like what they're wearing. Those are kind of wasted words. Focus more on the way that they act, the way that they think, what they do. So don't focus just on, what's happening around them. Focus on their response. Make them the center of your story. And we call this an active character. You can see in the purple there. Make them active instead of passive. Passive character, some of you may know the difference between an active voice and passive voice. Active is when you are doing something, you are taking action. The subject of a sentence is actually doing something. They're actually acting rather than just sitting back. When the sentence is passive, that means the subject is having something done to them. That's not as interesting. So you want to avoid having passive characters that have things happen to them, and instead make them active. That makes us root for them much more. Okay, now it's over to you guys. We're going to do a little task, and all I want you to do is follow these 3 points. So imagine that you are at the start of your exam and you need to come up with your own character that is the center of your story. They can be anyone you want. They can be someone that you know based on a real person. They could be based on a character from something that you've read, or they could be entirely original. Your task, and I want you to write this down in the chat, please, is to come up with their goal. What is it that they want? What is the obstacle to their goal? And how are they going to overcome it? How are they going to take action to overcome their goal? So I'm going to give you guys around a minute to do this. I'm keeping an eye on the time. And in a minute's time, I will ask you to share your answer. So take a moment, write down your idea in the chat, and then we'll see what you guys have come up with. So take a minute now. Okay, I can see some people sending me some messages. Remember to have those 3 elements. What is their goal? What is the obstacle? And how will they overcome that obstacle? Okay, 30 more seconds. All right, I'm going to read out a couple of these answers. So let me just read through some of these. Okay. All right, so here's one here. The goal of the character they want to get into a football team. Let's find the obstacle. The obstacle is that there's a mean character trying to get into the team as well. The solution, with the family and friends support, she overcomes the problem. Good, nice solution. Okay, let's see what else we've got. So someone here said their goal is to go to a football match. I'm looking for the obstacle. The obstacle is that it's been raining that entire week. And then I do need a solution for that one. Okay, this one is the goal is that they want to explore the forest, but they're not allowed, and so she overcomes it by planning an escape. Yeah, nice. Quite a rebellious solution there. Here's one, James, the character James. Their goal is to be smart. The obstacle is that the work is difficult. So to overcome the obstacle, they have to practice a lot. Good. Here's one. The goal is that they're a footballer and they're getting ready for the game. So I guess their goal is to achieve something good in that game. They've got injured, so they spend a lot of time exercising and they recovered just before the game. Yeah, that's a nice one. Okay, here's one. The character is Naomi Starr. She's a pop star who's arrogant. She wants to have a break from all her tiring work.
So she switches to live with another girl, switches lives with another girl who adores her. So her goal is to have a break. So but her obstacle is that she's very famous, so she overcomes it with that goal, with that solution. Yeah, that's very interesting. Kind of reminds me of Hannah Montana. Let's see. I'm going to read out 2 more. There are a lot here, so don't worry if I don't read them out. It's just because there's lots here and I can't necessarily see them all. Okay, here's one. The character is a Roman soldier in training. Their goal is to be put into battle. The obstacle, might take years of training and they might die. But the solution is they do extra training. Good, or the solution, it could even be that they just accept that that's the responsibility, couldn't they? They say, well, that is what you must do as a soldier. Okay, here's one more. Person Imogen, their goal is to go to an art club. The parents want her to be smart. The solution, she sneaks money from them and goes during lunchtime. Yeah, nice. I think that's good. Showing a way of following their dream in some sort of rebellious way. Yeah, really nice. Okay, brilliant. So a lot of you have picked up on that task really nicely, and that is what you can do. See, it didn't take long. You could do that in 1 minute. 1 minute, that's all you need to come up with some kind of important thing for your character and get a bit of sympathy from the reader. Okay, let's move on to our next slide, if we could have it. Thank you very much. So let's talk a little bit about character development. Now, this is something that you guys are already doing. You know, you're already doing this in your plans there about the character. So character development just means when we see our character change or see our character overcome something or push through a challenge in some way. Now, remember, of course, that you only have a short amount of time to write your task in the 11+ exam. So you're not going to be able to do a lot of complex character development, but it's something that's worth bearing in mind. So you could use their obstacles and their decisions to show how they overcome challenges. So I'm thinking particularly of the arrogant pop star. How could she become less arrogant? What problem in her character could be changed based on the obstacle she has to face? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So, for example, this is a way that you can do character development quite simply and easily. So imagine that the character wants to go to a party. That's their goal. They want to go to this party. But they find out that they've not been invited. That's their obstacle, right? But how they respond to that obstacle is going to show their character. That's going to be your chance to give them a sense of growth. Maybe, you know, their response could show what they're truly like. So let's look at the next slide. There are different options that you have to show how they respond to them not being invited to the party. So option 1, maybe they throw a tantrum and they start an argument with the person throwing the party. This would show that they were being petty and they were being jealous, but there's still an option. Option 2, they could ask for an invitation. They could simply confront the issue and go and ask directly. This would show that they're being polite and calm. Option 3, you can make them go and gate crash the party. This would show that they're being bold and rebellious. You know, option 4, another possibility is that they could accept the lack of the invite and throw a party of their own. This would show that they are being responsible and mature. So only a couple of these really show that the character is developing in some way. Does anyone want to suggest in the chat which ones you think show their development? Show that they are perhaps changing or growing in some way? Good, a lot of you have put this in the chat. 2 and 4, yes, 2 and 4 are the ones that show their development. They are faced with something, they could respond badly to it, but instead they choose to grow, they choose to develop themselves and become calm or responsible. So bear that in mind, bear that in mind. Think about how the character can grow as a result of the obstacle. Okay, and you might have guessed it, we're going to do a task where you have to do a little bit of this yourself. So here's your next task, everybody. Look back at the character that you created and think about how they solved their problem. What was it that they did to overcome the obstacle? And think about, you can write this in the chat, I'll give you a minute to do this. What did that show about their character?
What did it show about their personality? Something that changed, something that they developed, something that grew within them? What could that show? So have a think and write in the chat. How did your character change or develop? Okay, I can see some messages coming through. Okay, give everyone 30 seconds. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these. So how did your character develop? Just going to go back to the top of the chat. Okay, so some of them have said that their hard work shows that they learnt to never give up. Good. They become resilient. Yes, they become more patient. They keep going when things get tough. They all become more determined. They learn that there's always a way around everything. Excellent. They become more mature. They become more resilient. Yes, I've seen that one. They show perseverance. They have to become brave. They become independent. They overcome shyness and become independent. Excellent. They accept their fate and therefore become more responsible. Nice. Let's see. They stay focused on loyal to the task despite challenges. Yes, excellent. They grew perseverance. They decide to make clear, responsible decisions. They're showing that disability doesn't stop them from doing what they want. Yes, very nice. They show courage. Yes, very good. They become more optimistic. And they become able to negotiate. Yeah, good. So what you're all doing really nicely is you're finding some value that they gain from their experience, something that is positive that they have gained, rather than some way that allows that the problem kind of makes their character become worse in some way. Think about how your character can become better. Okay, let's move on. So another element of character development is show, don't tell. And I'm hoping that a lot of you will be familiar with this already, because this is a really important element of writing. So this is something that we talk a lot about in our creative writing courses as well. So we will do more. If you ever join one of our classes, you will cover this more. Show, not tell, or show, don't tell, is when you don't just tell people things are happening, you don't just state things. You show them through a range of different things, through the use of senses, through the use of dialogue, through the use of similes, metaphors, personification, sounds, colors, sights, smells, all kind of different things. You can show things are happening rather than just stating them. So I've got this nice quotation that I think sums this up really nicely from Anton Chekhov, who said, "Don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass." So that sort of sums this up. And this is what you can do with your characters. Instead of just saying they were sad, show tears spilled down their face. They sniffed helplessly. The tissues spread out around them as they tried to mop up their endless grief. Show us, don't just say it. So let's look at a couple of examples of show, don't tell. This first one is a tell. Alice cried as she watched her mother leave. That is pretty bland. Not much happens there. She's just telling us what Alice did. But we can show it in a different way. We can say, Alice sunk to the ground. How? How could she just leave? The tears streamed down her face, but she hardly noticed them. Her eyes were, sorry, just have to zoom that so I can see it better. Her eyes were focused on the door, waiting. Please, please, just, sorry, I just can't see that last bit. Just open. Yes. So there we go. So that one is an example of show, not tell, show. Was this showing Alice's distress rather than just telling us how she's feeling. We've got another example on the next slide. So this is the tell version. Something was burning. I tried to open the window, but it was stuck. So that's just telling us. That is very boring. There's nothing really going on there. But how do we show it? Here's an example. Smoke poured from the oven and the acrid scent of burnt meatloaf filled my nostrils. I tried to open the window, but years of caked on paint had made it impossible to budge. So now we're really showing the distress of the moment. We can actually see the smoke, we can smell it, and we can feel the distress as well of trying to open the window but struggling. So there we go. Show, don't tell. They are really, really useful. That's a really useful technique. And if you use that, you're definitely going to be impressing your examiner much more than just telling them things. Okay, let's move on to dialogue. Now, dialogue is something that I feel students sometimes misuse. There is not going to be a lot of time, as I've been saying a lot today, there's not going to be a lot of time to write a fully fledged story. You've only got about 30 minutes on average. So you must keep your dialogue minimal and use it only when necessary. In fact, I would suggest that you largely avoid dialogue entirely, unless there's like one thing that you want a character to say and you really think it would be useful to hear them say it out loud. So keep your dialogue very minimal, because otherwise you kind of risk making your writing just feel like a play script. And that is not useful. Dialogue, I can see in the chat, is speech. Dialogue is another word for speech. So sometimes I'll see students who are writing a story and they'll just have speech, 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 speech. It's just the talking. We don't even learn how they say it or why they say it. It's just the speech. And that is really not a good story. That is not effective. So try and avoid it unless it's entirely 100% necessary. And so if you want to include it, there are different ways you can think about how to do it better. So instead of just writing lots of speech with simple words like I said, you can add details. If you want to make something more interesting, if you want to include the dialogue, you can make it interesting, include description nonetheless. So I said could become I mumbled, my mind racing at 100 miles an hour. So there I might have used, there will obviously be a piece of speech attached to that description there, but I've not abandoned my description just because I've used dialogue. Or she said could become she shouted, her face growing red with anger. So try, if you are going to use dialogue, don't forget to use your descriptions. Don't forget that you still need to make it interesting. Don't just use dialogue just because it kind of makes your story quicker, it kind of tells the story quickly. Okay, so let's, on the next slide, we'll look at a few other examples of how you can use dialogue effectively. So here's the first one. But, wailed Max, wringing his hands in despair, you told me you were going to give me that game for my birthday. So you can see this one, the dialogue allows us to create a dilemma or creates a problem. And we've also got some descriptive language there telling us how Max actually said this. So it's not just abandoning description in favor of dialogue. Here's another one. Wait, Angela hissed, dropping quickly to the ground and dashing behind a bush. Someone's coming. So there, the dialogue is very minimal. It's only even 3 words, but it creates tension and it's being accompanied by more description as well. So that's a really good example. Here's the third one. Maisie wrinkled her nose and crossed her arms. We'll have to think of something. So here, if we just use the dialogue by itself, that would be tell, right? That would just be a tell sentence. But by showing it, she wrinkled her nose and crossed her arms, that kind of suggests a sense of decisiveness or a sense of determination. We can see it as well as hear it in the way that she says her dialogue out loud. So each of these examples, they are good because they include descriptive action, something that the character is doing, as well as a short piece of dialogue. The dialogue is brief and sticks to the point. So there you go. There's some examples of how dialogue can be used effectively. Now, another thing to bear in mind, if you are going to use dialogue, and this is a very common mistake that I see students make, so please bear this in mind so that you don't make this mistake. If you are going to use dialogue, make sure that you start a new line for every speaker. Now, this is an example here that comes from a novel by Charles Dickens, Nicholas Nickleby. I'm not going to read it out just for time's sake, but you can see that every time a new person speaks, it's a new line. So Mrs. Wycherley
she speaks first. Sorry, Wittitterly, that's her name. And then you can see Kate responds, new line for her. Then when Kate speaks again, a few lines down, they are here now, new line. And then when Miss Wittitterly speaks again, Miss Nickleby, new line again. So if you are going to use dialogue, you have to do it effectively and accurately in order to impress the examiner. Otherwise, it's just going to feel unnecessary and not particularly effective writing. So that's something to bear in mind. I can see a message. Should you use direct or indirect dialogue in a test? Well, what I'm saying here, this is what dialogue is always direct. Indirect is not really dialogue. That's more kind of description or describing what somebody said or how somebody felt. So you can use both. You can use both. I'm more referring here to direct dialogue when you use speech marks, which is what you want to be use minimally. Indirect dialogue is when you kind of like report that someone said something. So, for example, Kate told me that she was thinking of leaving town, let's say. Whereas if I was going to use direct, it would say, Kate said, I am thinking of leaving town. Now, these are both different forms of dialogue. I would say that indirect or reported is probably a bit more interesting. It allows you to be a bit more descriptive, but at the same time, you don't want to use too much of it. So the overall piece of advice here is be sparing, use dialogue, whether indirect or direct, minimally. And if you are going to use it, don't forget to include descriptions alongside it. I hope that answers the question there. People are asking which one is more effective. Well, they can both be effective. You just have to do it well. Neither of them is more effective than the other. Just you need to remember that you have to include descriptions as well. Okay, let's move on. I can see questions, but I will answer more questions in the question and answer section at the end of the session because I still got quite a bit to get through. Okay, let's talk a bit about creating setting. Now, this is something that I think students do not do nowhere near as much enough of this as they should. Creating setting is very, very important. And the thing or the feature of language that's going to be the most important for creating setting is the 5 senses. These are your best friend for creating setting. And I cannot tell you the amount of times I've reminded students, where are your 5 sentences? Sorry, not 5 sentences, 5 senses. Where are they? They are so useful, but students never use them as much as they should. So remember, use the 5 senses, not sentences. But remember, of course, that you're not going to have time to write loads and loads of paragraphs describing the setting. So you've got to just choose important aspects of it that are going to make the setting very, very clear. So as you can see from bullet point number 3, weather, smells, sounds. That is basically touch, because the weather, you can kind of feel it, can't you? The temperature, the wind, etc. Smells and sounds. These are going to be so useful for creating the setting. You can also use aspects of the setting throughout your writing to reinforce characters' thoughts or mood. And this is also known as pathetic fallacy. When, for example, if your character is sad or gloomy, you can reinforce that by using a kind of grey sky or rain or cold weather or something like that. If they're feeling angry, maybe it's stormy, maybe it's hailing, maybe it's really windy. You can, use the setting to tell us how your character might feel. I can see a question saying, do we have to use all the senses at once? No, but use a few at a time. Don't just use one by itself. Use a few, because if you use, let's say touch, smell, and sound together, that's already creating a bolder and clearer picture than if you just use sound by itself. So try and use a few senses at the same time. So that is the key thing that I'm going to mention for creating setting. I know there's a lot to get through today, everybody, but don't worry. As I said, you will have the slides to look over. And if you want to reread and make use of these pieces of advice yourself, you can do that. Okay, let's talk about narrative voices. Now, this is something that is kind of a choice that you can make at the start of a piece of writing. So you can decide if you're going to be an omniscient third-person narrator, or if you're going to be a first-person character narrator. Now, don't worry if you don't understand what that means, because we're going to discuss. So let's go to the next slide.
Now, an omniscient third-person narrator is a very common type of narrator that we get in most fiction. You'll often find it's a third-person narrator. Omniscient means all-knowing. So this is when you write in the third person, so you use pronouns like they, he, or she. So you're not in the story yourself, you're not a character, you are basically looking down on the story from above. You know everything more than the characters do. And you're telling the story from that perspective so that you know what's going to happen, whereas the characters in the story do not. So that's one version that you can use, is the omniscient third person narrator. Now, Sarah walked out of the door, barely knowing what she was going to be facing. You as the narrator, you know, she doesn't. So that can be one option that you can use. Now, the other option is a first person character narrator. Oh, actually, I forgot I had an example of this. So here's an example of using omniscient third person narrator. Scrambling up the mountain, Mary panted desperately. Her heart beat heavily in her chest and hot sweat poured down her back. Unbeknownst to her, what she was looking for was only a few short meters away, just hidden by the rocky peak. So this is using an omniscient third-person narrator, and obviously I know more than Mary does, because I know that the challenge that she is facing, the thing that she's trying to find, is just a little bit away from her. So if you're writing this in first person, then there would be more of a sense of unease, because we don't know, just like Mary, we don't know what's around the corner, because we basically are Mary. But in this case, if you want to have some elements that you're going to keep, you're going to share with your reader that the narrator doesn't know, that the character doesn't know, you can use third person to do that. Now, I'm going to give you we'll talk a little bit about first person character narrator, and then we'll give you a little task to practice here. So the other type of narrator you can use is a first person narrator. This is where you see the world from one single point of view. And you're obviously going to use pronouns like I, me. And this can be effective because it will allow you to show the inner thoughts and feelings of the character. And their view of the world is limited because, of course, you're only seeing the world through one person's perspective. And so therefore, the reader will also have a limited point of view, because the events are going to unfold at the exact same time for the narrator as for the reader. Now, I can see a lot of people are saying in the chat, which one should I use? You can use either. But what you must do is be consistent. You must make this decision at the start of your writing and do not change it. Do not falter from it. You must keep it consistent, because that's a big grammatical mistake if you don't do that. So here's that exact same sort of task. Okay, I can see people saying which is more effective. I just said you can use either. A lot of these things, neither of them is more effective. You have to choose which one you use. Both can be brilliantly effective if you do them well. Neither of them is more effective than the other. So you have to make that decision for yourself. But both of them work well. Just be consistent with it. So here's an example of using a first person character. Narrator. Scrambling up the hill, I felt my legs burn with the strain. Sweat was beading on my forehead, sticking uncomfortably to my hair. How much longer would I have to climb? Cruelly, the mountain seemed to grow with every step I took. It was teasing me, haunting me. So this one is the same version as the one with Mary, but this time it's first person. So you're seeing the sort of distress through her eyes instead of knowing, like the narrator does, that something is going to, that her problem is actually going to be soon solved. So we're going to do a little example of this. If we go back 2 slides. Yeah, that's the one. So we're going to do a little example of a kind of similar version to Mary's story here. So we're going to practice these 2 different narrating styles. And this is a good opportunity for you guys to figure out which one works best for you, because everyone has a type of narrator that they prefer writing in, and this is a way for you to practice this. So I would like you to imagine that you are describing a boy opening a letter which contains good news. And your task, I'm just going to give you 1 minute to do so, is to write a few sentences in the omniscient third person narrator. So you're going to say he, okay? He opened the letter. James, Bob, whatever you want to call him, say he. And write a few sentences describing the boy's feelings, or from the perspective of that third person narrator. So in a second, I'm going to get you to do the exact same thing with first person. So just bear in mind, this is the third person version. How would you tell that story from third person, imagining that you know everything, but the boy only knows what he knows in that moment? So everyone take a moment, take 1 minute to write a short couple of sentences that describe this using third person. Okay, another few seconds. All right, so let's have a look. Tom opened the letter fast as a flash. He gaped in astonishment as he read it. Lily was safe in the hotel. Okay, good. So this is third person. Obviously, you are kind of keeping back what it is that he read until he reads it as well. Let's see what else you've got. While Harry was sitting on the couch, he heard the flap of the letterbox bang open. He rushed to the door excitedly. Nice. You are following Harry's actions. You don't see anything before he does. James excitedly ripped open the letter while everyone was watching him. His heart was beating rapidly, opening it to see whether he got into the school. As he skimmed and scanned through the letter, a smile grew on his face. Excellent. So you're building up the tension. You're not necessarily telling us anything before James knows. But at the same time, it's allowing us to be kind of one of the spectators as well. Let's see. What else we got? Nico's eyebrows furrowed. What is this? He had no friends. Everyone had forgotten what century they lived in. So who would be sending him letters? He opened it carefully, expecting it to be more cruel taunts. A wide grin spread across his face as his brain registered the words on the page. Yeah, lovely. There's lots of good descriptions here, guys. I'll just read out one more. Max was filled with mixed emotions when he saw the letter addressed to him, because it could be good or bad. Little did he know that it was going to be the best news of his life. Yeah, good. So using the little did he know, that is taking advantage of the fact that you're using third person. Okay, brilliant. Right, now just to do the other side of that, okay, just to do the other side, let's do the exact same thing, the description of the boy opening the letter, but containing good news, but this time in first person. Okay, so imagine that you are the boy. This time you are the boy. You're not third person. It's now the boy. Take 1 minute to do that. Okay, let me read a couple of these. Okay, I was given a letter. What did it contain? Did it contain good or bad news? Cautiously, I let my hands open the secretive letter, which contained a mystery yet to discover. I read it. Very nice. Yes, so we can feel your excitement as we read. We are discovering it along with you. I opened the letter not knowing what life-changing information I would receive. Would I get into the renowned school? As I slowly comprehended the words laid out in front of me, a grin broke out on my face. Nice. Yeah, good. I dashed towards the letterbox as I heard the metal flap bang. It was filled with different emotions. Was it good or bad news? It's good. The rhetorical questions work really well in first person because you can imagine exactly what the narrator is asking themselves. Okay, I'll just read one more. I rushed in a blink of an eye as my mouth opened with a burst of joy, hearing the doorbell. I read the letter, realizing that this letter was life-changing for me. Yeah, really good, guys. So you can see that the same exact story can be retold in those two different ways, and they're both good. Neither of them is necessarily more effective than the other, but you have to decide which one you think works best. Do you want to be able to reveal things before the narrator, before the character knows them? or do you want to be able to connect more with the, the feelings of the character? As in, like, do you want to show more of what's going on inside of their mind? Both of them can work well. Just decide what works best for you. Okay, because of time, I'm just going to whiz through a couple of other last things before we do the Q&A. So this is us coming back to acronyms. This is something I mentioned at the start of the lesson. And these are on the screen really for you to be able to use and go back to in the slides when you go through your notes. As I said, when you are planning your writing, make sure that you use an acronym. This one that's on the screen now, DeForest, is really for persuasive writing. So you might not necessarily use this for story writing. Direct address, alliteration / anecdote, facts, opinions from experts, rhetorical questions, repetition, exaggeration, emotive language, statistics, triplet rule of 3. But as you can see, just by writing down that one word, DeForest, I've managed to collect together like 15 or 12 or 15 different techniques that I can then use. So that's the one for persuasive writing. Now, for descriptive writing or narrative writing, you can use these. And I mentioned 3 repairs earlier. So 3 is the rule of 3, using 3 adjectives in a row or 3 verbs in a row to convey powerful description. Rhetorical questions, exaggeration or hyperbole. Personification, alliteration, imagery, that means using the senses basically to create a visual picture or to allow the reader to imagine something clearly. Repetition, and then simile. And of course, simile, you can also kind of connect to metaphor. So make sure that you are happy with an acronym that you know very well and that you can use in your planning. Another thing that you can do and practice doing is using a checklist. Now, we have a creative writing checklist that you can use. And we'll give you a little example of one of them here. So this is the descriptive writing checklist. And we would recommend that you practice using this when you're doing writing tasks at home so that you get used to it and you know what it involves. So as you can see, it starts off with key things to do with structure. So the beginning of the story, the middle, and the end. Have you structured it with those 3 parts? It reminds you to include a certain amount of paragraphs and paragraph types, as well as the way that you structure your sentences, the openers that you use, and the punctuation types that you include. Then it reminds you to include, to avoid using comma splicing and making sure that you do a temporal or focal shift. That means a shift in time or a shift in focus. It reminds you to include a range of vocabulary words, verbs, and adjectives. And then it goes through your various language techniques, as we've been discussing, using the 5 senses, zooming in on specific details, and then using all those figurative devices that you're familiar with, similes, metaphors, personification, pathetic fallacy. All of these are listed there for you. And then finally, on the last page, it just reminds you to be accurate. So it reminds you to include correct spelling, correct tense throughout, and correct grammar. So that's one thing that we have for you that you can use to make sure that you are including all the different features. Now, just to finish, because I'm aware that we don't have loads of time left, I'll just quickly go over a couple of exam tips. Most creative writing tasks for the 11 plus are around 30 minutes. That does vary, but typically it's 30 minutes. We suggest that you follow this timing structure. So spend 5 minutes planning, 20 minutes writing, and 5 minutes proofreading and checking. You can pick up on a lot of mistakes in those 5 minutes that remain. So use that structure when you're at home practicing. Get into the habit of including all of those 3 elements, because that's what's going to give you the most effective piece of writing. Now, for the marking, the way that these are marked, they're typically out of 20 or 25, but this does vary depending on the exam paper, so we can't guarantee what the marking will be. But bear in mind that there are marks on offer for the content, as well as the accuracy. So you need to focus on interesting descriptions, up-leveled and creative sentences, show not tell, creative use of punctuation, and a clear and focused story, rather than just writing as much as possible. The content is the actual language that you have used and how effective it is. Accuracy is also, you know, your ability to spell correctly, use punctuation correctly, grammar, etc. So remember that there is marks for everything. If you spell everything wrong, but you write a lot, that's not going to necessarily get you a good mark. So you have to be thinking about those small details as well. Okay, and I think that's pretty much us finished. We'll just mention a couple of pointers that might be useful for you before we go into our Q&A. If you want to do more of this, we have plenty of creative writing resources for you to use. We've got lots of creative writing past papers and model answers for you to have a look at. We've got creative writing courses for you to do in the different holidays. There'll be ones coming up over Christmas. We've also got our creative writing video course. So all of these are really useful resources for you to use if you want to keep improving your creative writing. And you'll get lots of resources for planning, checklists and things that you can use to revise afterwards and make sure that your writing is effective. And this is what they look like on the website. So do take a look and find something that is the best for you. So that is the end of our creative writing masterclass, and I would like to hand over back to Akanksha now as we go into our Q&A for parents to join if they have any questions about this kind of thing. This would be the time to do that. So if your parents do want to join, please do encourage them to do so. Thank you, everybody, for joining today.
Thank you, Lewis. And thank you guys for joining the session. I hope you had a great time learning everything about 11+ creative writing, about story writing, character development, plot structure, and more. And as a big thank you to you guys, we are essentially providing you with 30% discount for attending the masterclass. So you can use the code MASTER30 and avail 30% discount. This coupon code is valid for only 1 day from right now. So I encourage you guys to explore the website. We have a lot of creative writing related resources at Pi Academy. So for example, we have all the creative writing past papers. You can find it under 11+ papers. Over here, we would be providing you with hints, plans, and model answers. And for example, we would also be providing you with insights into what the right answer looks like and what a poor response looks like. So for example, in all our creative writing papers, you can find the question, hint, plan, and the model answer. And in certain questions, we've also included poor responses. So you also have an idea as to what not to do while you're preparing for your creative writing section. And as Lewis said, for Christmas, we are having our 11+ creative writing and comprehension courses. These are mastery courses, 5-day long courses that would really help you grasp all aspects of creative writing. And as a lot of you guys were asking us for the lecture notes, we would definitely be sharing it with you. And essentially, when you enroll for these courses, you would be having a more in detail, more practical approach to the concepts that you were taught today. So do explore Pi Academy and all the resources that we have, including creative writing. And the coupon code is applicable on the creative writing mastery classes. It's applicable on the creative writing past papers. And in case you want to explore certain pre-recorded courses, you can also approach the 11+ video section. And we have certain courses here. So we have the 11+ creative writing mastery course, which is pre-recorded. So if in all of these courses, you would be getting a complete checklist, which would help you structure your answers better and boost your creative writing scores in the final examination. So these courses are structured in the following manner. They have detailed videos on descriptive writing, persuasive narrative writing, with lots of homework and tips on how to improve your creative writing. The mastery video course also has tests which you can use to improve upon your creative writing pieces. So with this, if you have any more doubts for me or Lewis, you can drop it in the chat box. and we would be happy to answer them. So Rutarith has a question. Do you have to pay for the videos? So yes, all these are paid subscriptions. So essentially the free masterclass is a quick short look into what you can expect in the paid subscriptions at Pi Academy. And yes, all these are paid subscriptions, and only for today, only for the attendance of this webinar, we are providing a 30% discount. So you can utilize that on the paid subscriptions. Mahi is asking, where would you get the checklists? So depending on which course you register, for example, in the video course, once you pay for the course, you would be able to unlock the checklist on our Pi Academy dashboard. And also along with the 11 plus creative writing papers, there are checklists on each question paper. So you can head over to Pi Academy, go through all the question papers that are there. Depending on the type of question, the checklist varies. So I would encourage you to go through the 3 creative writing products, which are 11 plus creative writing past papers, 11 plus creative writing pre-recorded video courses, and the 11 plus live creative writing courses. So in all of these, you would be accessing the checklist, and it would really help you structure your answers for the 11 plus exam. So how often do live lessons come? So these live lessons are essentially dependent on the half term or term time holidays that children have. And as Christmas holidays are coming up, a lot of parents have been asking us for courses for their kids, especially live courses, because over there, there's a possibility of the teacher to provide a little more personalized feedback, which is not really possible in a group setting like this. So live courses of Christmas have been launched. You can check out the dates. We, other than creative writing, we also have comprehension. We have an interview workshop for students who might be appearing for interviews in the upcoming months. We have verbal and non-verbal reasoning mastery courses and algebra and geometry mastery courses. And we also have courses on fractions, decimals, and percentages, and statistics and probability. So depending on the topics that you find more difficult, you can go for the course of your choice. And today's Master 30 coupon is applicable on all the products that I'm showing you. So you can essentially apply it to multiple products at once, and it would save you 30% of the cost. And for those of you who might not be interested in the live courses, you can always go and check out our pre-recorded video courses. They are available in all the subjects that I just mentioned. So over here also, you would be able to find comprehension, creative writing, algebra, advanced and beginner courses, geometry, and fractions. So essentially, if you have a time constraint, you can essentially go through these video courses at your convenience at a time that suits you well. So Danielle has a question. Can we use some of our own structure when we have problems finding any?
I assume that they're talking about the structure of a creative writing piece. Let me just... Yeah, I mean, I assume, okay, what I'm assuming that you're talking about is obviously what we're providing here are like various different suggestions for how you structure it. So I was talking a lot in the creative writing task about using the sort of beginning, middle, and end and the 3 sections. If you have another version of that that works well, then yes, you can. What we're just doing here is giving you things that we know can be adaptable and work really well for a range of different writing tasks. So just another part of another question. So I would say you can, but try and make your structure like clear based on what we've been discussing here as well, because the reason that we suggest the beginning, middle, and end is that it's really easy to keep track of. It doesn't mean that you're going to be spending loads of time planning, or you're going to be thinking, you know, oh, I need to come up with this complicated structure with different parts. If you follow what we suggest, it will make your life so much easier. That is kind of the reason that we do it. So I would say try and use the structures that we suggest. And if you want to look at more of these, we do have the Mastery Creative Writing Mastery course where we talk about different structures for a range of different writing tasks. but try and have clear structures ready and use templates that will allow you to write in a clear way. It's not going to overcomplicate things. That's what we're here for, really, and that's why we're suggesting these things for you. And then there was another question, wasn't there? When writing a narrative, is there a way to shorten the opening and the ending? Well, this is what I was talking about with setting for the opening. I would say that the opening, what students often do wrong is they spend too much time kind of introducing what a character is doing in that moment. So set the scene by using the setting, right? Using the a description of their surroundings, make that really clear, and then get straight into what your character is doing. You don't have a lot of time to introduce them, so get straight into the action from the beginning. As long as you've set the scene clearly with a couple of uses of the sentences, maybe a bit of pathetic fallacy to describe where they are, then get straight in. What are they doing? Maybe have them doing something rather than waking up in the morning and getting ready, because so many students do that. They start from the beginning of the day. Alice woke up and she got dressed and she brushed her teeth and she had breakfast. That is not useful to the story. So get straight into the key events of the action. Remember, follow that rule of one. And the ending as well, it just needs to tie up neatly. It doesn't need to be a long, convoluted ending. It should be, what's their dilemma? How are they going to overcome the dilemma? And then how does that resolve? So don't spend time on unnecessary things. I hope that sort of answers the question there.
So we have a question from Rutirat. For the interview course, will it be like this lesson or is it a video? So all these courses that you see here, these are all live lessons. It would be a live tutoring. As you can see, we've mentioned here live tutoring. And in this live tutoring, you would be essentially in a class with around 3 to 4 more children. We maintain a small batch size so that our tutors can personalize and give personal attention to all students. So it would be an live tutoring. The tutor would be interacting with the students, and essentially when we talk about free master classes and group courses, there are a lot of students, as we can see in the meeting. But in these workshops and mastery courses, it would be around 1 tutor and 5 to 6 students. So I would encourage you to go ahead with the interview workshop. And we also had a question from Tanvi. Do I need to pay subscription fee to join Pi Academy? So essentially in Pi Academy, yes, the resources that I'm showing over here, they are all paid and they all do have subscription fees. But in case you are looking for like a one-stop solution, essentially like one subscription that you can purchase and then the complete website unlocks for you, in that case, I would recommend that you check out our pricing section, and here you would find the 11 plus monthly subscriptions. So these are subscriptions that our members use. This is really good for those who want to unlock all the papers and start practicing using our free planners that are available on each paper. So we have the silver, diamond, and gold plans. The silver and gold plans are monthly plans, and the diamond plan is annual in nature. So essentially with the diamond plan, you would be unlocking all subscriptions for the upcoming 12 months. And with the diamond and gold plans, you would also be unlocking 11 plus live weekend classes. So essentially every weekend on Sundays, we run 2.5 hours of 11 plus exam classes. These classes are in Maths, English, VR, and NVR. So depending on what you would prefer, whether it's an annual option, which comes out to be more budget friendly, or the monthly option, you can essentially go ahead, become a member, and unlock everything that's there on the website. And I would also like to reiterate that the Master 30 coupon code can be used on the 11 plus diamond plan. So you would be able to secure 30% off, and it on a monthly basis, it comes down to around £35 per month. So this is a great option for those of you who are looking to secure next 10 to 12 months of preparation, have all the resources in front of you. So you can definitely check this out. Tanvi has a doubt? Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to answer one quick question I saw. Which was about, are there any examples of good creative writing short pieces we can look at, which I thought would be good just to show the various ones that they have on the website there. Yeah, so this is where they are for whoever asked that question on the website. Loads of different writing tasks, and on each one you can see
you know, the model answer, the hint, the plan, and the poor answer as well. So this is where to look if you would like to see some examples. So yeah, there you go. So there's the question, the poor answer. Obviously, you'll have to join in order to see these things, but this is where you can have a look at some examples.
So for every subscription, we have a free sample paper. You can go through the free papers without having to subscribe. And over here, you can essentially see what you would be getting with the subscription. And as you can see, we have a creative writing checklist for every paper that we have. For all questions, we have a hint, detailed plan, and a model answer. And we also show students what they're not supposed to do. So they can also look at a poor answer and make sure that they don't write along these lines.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some questions for the weekend classes. Avik is asking, what's the student batch size for live weekend classes? We have around 10 students for the live weekend classes, and these classes are fairly interactive. And we also have homeworks. These are automated homeworks in the live weekend classes. So it's essentially a mixture of tests which are online and tests where we share the questions and the final answers. So with the live weekend classes, if you're looking to find more information on the live weekend classes, you just need to essentially go to 11 plus courses. And under 11 plus courses, we have a list of all our live tutoring classes. And when you scroll all the way down, you can see the year 5 Sunday classes. And we also have year 4 foundation classes in case your child is in year 4 and you're preparing an year in advance. You can also check this out. So in the weekend classes, you would be unlocking all the subscriptions that are there on the Pi Academy website. And along with that, you would be having 52 sessions of Sunday classes. And as you can see, we cover Maths, English, VR, and NVR. We have a very detailed syllabus structure. We make sure that we cover all topics that are there in 11 plus Maths, English, VR, and NVR. And we have structured the course in such a manner that regardless of whether you are preparing for grammar or independent schools, it would prepare you for in a very holistic manner. So you could be targeting different schools or different exam boards, but this one subscription would help you prepare for both. So we have on purpose structured it in that manner. So as you can see, we target exam boards which are CEM, GL, SCT, IS, EB, and CSSE. So depending on which board you're looking for, you can subscribe. So Avik, yes, Avik is asking if we have more questions later on. Is there an email that I can contact? I request our chat support to just drop their email on the chat. It is essentially support@Pi Academy. You can also, if you can see here, there is a message box. So you can just click on it and you can start chatting with our team. Okay. So yes, so thank you so much, guys. I think we are at the end of the session now. Thank you, Louis, for a wonderful session. And please do not forget to utilize your coupon code, which is Master30. It is live for just 1 day. And we have a lot of courses in creative writing and other subjects that you can check out. So yes, I urge you to check out Pi Academy's website. We would be sharing the lecture notes and some more material with you, some recommended resources. You can go through them after the class. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.